Firefly guitars are cheap Chinese junk. Hey everybody, Jay Salen here, welcome back to the channel. So I hear that comment quite a bit about how cheap Chinese guitars are just junk, they're destined for the landfill, they won't last more than a year, 6 months maybe, they're made of particle board and the cheapest components and materials that you can imagine. And I usually talk about Firefly guitars when I talk about how good a cheap guitar can be, because I've gotten several of them for around the $200 mark, and they've all been pretty good. I haven't kept all of them. I had a couple semi-hollow bodies that I got rid of because I'm not into that type of guitar. And then I had a double cut like the Les Paul Jr. style guitar. I think that one had P90s in it, and I don't know, I wasn't real thrilled with the sound of that particular guitar either. And a lot of people think that I have 10 or 15 Firefly guitars up on the wall, and that's not true. I have a Strat style that my wife got me for Christmas a couple years ago, which obviously I buy and sell guitars, but I'm not going to get rid of that one because I think she'd be pretty bent out of shape if I did it. Not that I would get rid of it anyway. I mean, it's a really good guitar. And then for a video that I did and some more videos that I'm planning on doing, I got the Telecaster style that I did the video on, and that I'm probably definitely keeping because basically for the flame maple neck alone. The flame maple neck on that thing is absolutely incredible, and a lot of people really kind of push back on that, and they claim that it was, you know, it had to have been a decal or faked or burned or whatever. No, it's actual flame maple, and you'll see the difference between that flame maple neck and the one I'm about to show you. So I decided to get another Firefly, this time another Strat, basically with the intention of disassembling it, dissecting it, taking it apart. But I don't want to destroy it. I just want to take it apart, take apart the parts that you can take apart, sort of disassemble it, sort of gently, so that I can see really what's under the hood, do a really super deep dive to see how well made everything is, just to see how it's built. And part of that is going to be revealing the flame in the neck to find out if it's really flame maple. I have a feeling it is, because the flame on this guitar isn't quite as pronounced as the flame on that Telecaster. The flame on that Telecaster is just unbelievable. So for the price that I got it for, it's just, how is that possible? But anyway, so, and then I'm gonna strip some of the paint off so that we can find out how many pieces of wood they use, and maybe find out what type of wood, because, you know, when you say, hey, it's a roasted mahogany body, then you get a lot of pushback from people that says, oh, it can't possibly be mahogany, and roasted is just a marketing gimmick and all this stuff. You know, and they say they call any wood mahogany, but whatever. So I'm gonna kind of try to reveal what's underneath the paint and see what it is. But like I said, I don't want to destroy it. So it's a really nice guitar. So here it is. It's sort of that Olympic white color. It's really, really nice. I would put a tortoiseshell pickguard on it. Rosewood fretboard, and this is the flame maple. So you can see a little bit of it, but it's just not as pronounced as the Telly. I mean, look at that neck on that Telly. It is absolutely stunning. So this one just doesn't quite live up to this one here. So the interesting thing about Firefly is they're a very mysterious company, because, you know, they don't really advertise, they don't really promote their guitars. I think they work with a few of the influencers out there. I'm not one of them. All this stuff is just my own thing. I buy them myself. I do this stuff. They don't have anything to do with it. And then they've got a Facebook page. I think it's their page, and that's where they announce new releases coming up. So I don't know if it's like Tease Guitars, where it's an American company that just buys them, you know, in batches, and then when they're gone, and then they buy more, and then when they're gone, they're gone. I don't know. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, might as well plug it in and play it, just so that we can hear what it sounds like. And then I'm going to take it upstairs to the shop and we're going to take this thing apart. So that's the bridge humbucker. There's the neck pickup. And the middle. Okay, let's take it upstairs and rip it apart. Okay, here I am out in the shop in my garage. Hey everybody, Future Jace here. So I wanted to stop the video right here. The following part where I'm out in the shop and I'm dissecting this guitar turned out to be really long and kind of cumbersome and not really interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide sort of a little bit of narration, and I'll do some clips of things that I've found and the way I took things apart and things like that. And then I'll just kind of discuss here real quickly what I found. So we're going to cover a few things. We're going to start with the neck. So we're going to talk about the flame on the neck. We're going to talk about how the neck is made with the stainless frets and the quality of the neck and that type of thing. And then we'll move on to the tuners. We'll talk about what the tuners are made out of, how well they're made. And then we're going to move on to the pickups, how the pickups are made, what they're made from. And then we're going to talk about the internal electronics, like the switch and the pots and things like that. And then we'll cover the general hardware, like the trem and all that good stuff. And then we will move on to the body, and we'll talk about how well the body's made, what it's made of, how many pieces it is, and all that good stuff. And really what we're trying to do is just get a sense of the quality of the guitar, how well it's made, where the corners were cut, you know, because it's a budget guitar. Obviously, they had to cut corners to an extent. I don't think they had to have to cut corners as much as people think, because, you know, guitars coming from China, China makes all this stuff. They're the ones that make all the parts. They're the ones that make, you know, the tuner knobs and the pickups and the copper wire and the Alnico magnets, and they have a huge supply of steel and aluminum and all the raw materials to make guitars. So it shouldn't be a surprise that they can build guitars inexpensively, because they're sort of the world supply for all of this stuff. Interestingly, I found out that they didn't really cut a lot of corners. You'll see where, and we'll get into that. But I want to talk about the metals that they used and things like that. And then I also found an interesting thing out about the pickups, which kind of leads me to believe that I have a theory about where the Firefly guitars are made. I may be completely wrong, but I think it's a pretty good one. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the neck first. I'm going to sort of play this video that I edited. Okay, so the first thing I did was I took it upstairs, took all the strings off of it, and then took the neck off. Absolutely take everything apart. Decent screws in the neck. Okay, so there's the neck. They did a little bit of work on the neck there to get it to fit. You can see they did a little bit of work on the inside corners, and there's a shim in the neck as well. Actually, there's quite a few shims in the neck. So the first thing I discovered when I took the neck off was that the neck has been, you know, worked on a little bit. The radiuses on the neck here were sanded down, were filed down manually, because they were probably having trouble getting the neck to fit in the neck pocket. And then as you can see, maybe by this shot here, you can see where they worked on the neck pocket. And then they also, on the neck pocket, let me see if I can get this right there, glued in a piece of veneer to, you know, so they probably cut, you know, so I'm not sure if this body was cut on a CNC machine or not. It kind of makes me suspicious that it was, because, you know, usually CNC machines will produce, I mean, I've cut bodies and necks on a CNC machine and I got the fit perfect. So I don't know if these necks are made somewhere else and then they get them in, and the bodies are made somewhere else and then they, you know, they maybe shared files or whatever, and then they get them in and they don't exactly fit, and so then they had to do some manual work on it. But anyway, that's a little strip of veneer that they glued into the neck pocket because it was probably too wide there. There was probably a gap there. And then I think this is the bracket for paint, when they paint it. And then there's like a little issues, like there's a little bump here. I don't know if that's in the paint or whatever. And then the radius of this here is a little funky. That might even had a piece of wood put in it. Okay, so I'm getting kind of off track here with the body, but the neck is a rosewood fretboard with the flame maple. And that flame maple is real. It's not a decal. And so what I did was I sanded down the finish on the neck. There's just a thin matte finish on it. I had somebody in the comments say that the finish on these guitars is 2-inch thick poly, that they just dip it. Really and first of all, the body's only 1 3/4 thick. So if you added 2 inches of poly, that would make the body, let's see, 5 3/4 inches thick. So, and then they said something about the poly on the neck too being thick, but this is just super thin. It's just a lightweight matte finish, and that's easy to do. You don't have to polish it. You know, you could just spray it, maybe sand it a couple times, spray it, maybe lightly buff it with like a Scotch-Brite or something like that. So it's a lot easier to do a matte finish than it is to do a gloss finish. So then the glue joint is really, really well done. And okay, so we got a bone nut. I tested the bone nut. I put a hot wire on it to see if it would melt, but it didn't. It's a bone nut. Stainless steel frets. The frets are, I mean, they're perfectly in line. You know, they don't, you know, the ends of them, because they cut them, and sometimes you get like this wave down the fret board, and they are just immaculate. So that's what makes me think that maybe these necks were made in a different factory than the body, because the body's got just some minor quality issues. Okay, what else? And then the headstock is different, and somebody said, I read on, I don't know, it was a blog post or Facebook or something, that Firefly has changed the headstock because I guess people didn't like the previous one. And that's this one right here. So as you can see, they're quite different. So I had said that maybe this guitar was an old model, like a return, but I'm thinking maybe these are the new ones. So that makes me think that maybe Firefly has either changed suppliers, or to save money, or they just shop around all the time. That's why you get the guitars in batches, that maybe they're shopping around all the time. They just get them made where they can. So maybe they have the necks made somewhere. I don't know, this is all theory at this point, but it just raises some interesting questions, I think. And then, like I had said, the holes for the inlays were a little, like maybe they didn't quite get them cut properly. They've got some gaps on the edges, but you don't really notice it because they've filled it in, and they're smooth. So, the neck on this is amazing. So that's one of the things about a guitar, is I think that sort of defines whether it's a good guitar or not is the neck, how well the neck feels, how well it's made, and this neck is made really well. Okay, let's move on to the tuners. I did end up taking one of the tuners off, and so I wasn't able to get the tuner taken apart, but I did confirm that the tuners are cast brass, and this is where I sort of made an interesting discovery, which some people may already know, and it might be a duh moment on my part. But when I was taking it apart, I noticed that the Trem claw is brass. I mean, it looks very coppery, and as I took, so I said in the video that it's brass, that the Trem claw is brass, and and I scratched into the back plate, and that's brass underneath the chrome plating, and same with the tuner knobs, they're brass. But then when I started taking apart like the pickups, see that's a brass back plate, but it's a completely different color. If you can see it, there we go. This is yellow brass, this is red brass. I had no idea there was a difference. Brass is copper and I think nickel. So the nickel content in this brass is higher than in this brass. But they're very durable, corrosion resistant. I mean, this isn't pot metal like they call it. It's not cheap metal. It's brass. So these tuner buttons are brass. Like I said, the back plate is brass. It's chrome plated. The chrome, I had to scratch into it pretty good to get it off. I mean, it's not a huge thick layer of chrome on there, but it's done really well. It's not flaking off or anything. So the quality of that, I think, is done really well. So that I found interesting. I was really kind of baffled by the two different colors of that metal. And then another thing that I discovered in the tuner, these are locking tuners. So the gears inside the tuner are really nice looking. They're yellow brass, and there's a lot of teeth on them. And so the fine, you get a real fine motion, tuning. And then the ratio, you'll see a lot of times when people are listing the specs on a tuner, they'll say 18:1. So that's 18 turns, full turns of the knob to make one revolution of the tuner. And you want a higher ratio to get a real fine, a fine tuning. So I had counted 32, I think, revolutions to 1. So that's really fine tuning. So that's good too. So I mean, I think, isn't that a sign of quality? That it's, that the tuners are, and people say, well, they're not going to last, they're not going to last. So I don't know, how brass, chrome-plated brass isn't going to last. So, another thing is people, like I had said, people have claimed that the poly finish on these is like 2 inches thick, or they dip it or whatever. And as you can see here, I sanded off the finish. It didn't take much. It's a really light finish, and we'll talk more about the body and what the wood is made out of. I don't think it's nitro lacquer. When I was sanding it off, it did have a real sort of, I don't know, lacquer smell to it. So maybe it's nitro. I don't know. See, that's the thing. You don't get a lot of information from the Firefly website. But the paint jobs on these things are just incredible. And I think it's a base coat, clear coat, because that's to me what it looks like, but I could be wrong. But it's done really well. It's just a really fine layer of paint. All right, then I moved into taking off the knobs and taking out the pickups, removing everything from the pick guard. And that's when I scraped into the different The jack cup was brass.
Chrome-plated brass.
Chrome-plated
Everything else is made
brass.
up, and then they just...
And then I took apart the, you know, the trem and all that stuff. Trem springs were just like any other guitar. And then the bushings for the 2-point, it's got a 2-point trem on it, and the bushings for the trem are brass also. And then the bridge is brass. And the bridge is numbered 184. That's all that's on it, is just a stamp that says 184, so I'm not sure what that is. And then they changed the saddles on this guitar. The Strat style guitar has different saddles on it. Let me see if I can focus. See, those are cast, probably also brass, cast. And on my other one, so this guitar is 2 years old, two and a half years old. I think it'll be 3 years old in December. This has the bent steel saddle, saddles. 2-point trem also. That looks pretty close to being the same. Body thickness is full size. Let's measure that real quick. 1 3/4 right on the nose. And then you can see the routings in it too. So it's designed for, you know, you can do the super strat style. It's not the swimming pool route, it's the humbucker, single humbucker, HSH. I don't know what this big thing is here. So I don't know if it's weight relief maybe. That could be weight relief. And then interestingly enough, the jack, you know, everything is painted with the black conductive paint or whatever they call it for noise reduction. But the hole for the jack isn't covered in that paint. So, okay, so the Trem Block this is a 1/2 inch, little over a 1/2 inch thick by 1.5 inches deep. It's heavy. I think it's steel. I mean, it looks like steel. Some kind of, you know, I scratched into it and it didn't, you know. So it's definitely some kind of steel. It's heavy. So everybody says that that's a sign of quality, that, you know, people upgrade their guitars all the time with a thicker Trem Block because they say that it adds more sustain. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I did an experiment with a guitar that I modded and put a thicker Trem Block in it, and it didn't really change it, so I don't know. Okay, so let's move on to the electronics. These are the pots. So I took apart one of the tone knobs to see what that was made out of. It's just an aluminum housing. It's got that little piece of circuit board type wafer in it that's got where there's like strips of aluminum where the rheostat is, and then there's some plastic pieces in there, and then the shaft is brass. They're full-size pots. They're not marked, so I have no idea what brand they are, but they seem to be good. I don't know. I don't know how you gauge the quality of that. I guess I'd have to take a CTS pot apart and compare it to one of these to see if they're, I'm assuming they're made very similarly. But people are always like, oh, full-size pots, full-size pots. That means quality. So, well, these have full-size pots, so. And then the 5-way switch is a mechanical switch, and it's really nice. I mean, it's got, you know, it's firm. It's not loose. It's not sloppy. It's a really nicely made
50K
switch.
That's the...
So now let's move on to the pickups. Now this is where I made an interesting discovery. So the single coil pickups, there's a middle pickup, and they got cloth wires on them, leads. They're a plastic bobbin. So it's probably a one-piece bobbin. There's probably plastic, you know, behind in the core, and then the Alnico. I say Alnico. It's my Midwestern accent. Alnico magnets are pushed in there. And then if you don't know you know, because there's a major controversy over Alnico and ceramic magnets. Ceramic magnets are cheap and they're garbage and blah, blah, blah. Well, Alnico is only really refers to the metal that the rods are made out of. Alnico is aluminum, Al, nickel, Ni, cobalt, Co. That's where you get Alnico from. But the primary component in these is iron, because it's a ferrous metal. That means that you can magnetize it. And so they're just cast. So whatever metal, you know, is poured into a mold and cast into rods, maybe certain lengths, and then they cut them, and then they polish them, and then chamfer the edges. So it's really just a piece of metal, and it's not a magnet until they magnetize it, until they run it through a magnet to magnetize it. So it's really not, I mean, there's no voodoo magic to it, you know. If your pickup has a ceramic magnet, then it's just steel or metal, some kind of metal slug in there, and then they glue the magnet to the back of it, and that's what magnetizes, you know, that steel. Alnico, the alloy is such that it can retain the magnetism. So that's why they call it permanent magnet. So you can magnetize it and then it'll stay, unless you affect it somehow magnetically, it'll stay magnetized. Whereas probably plain steel doesn't hold its magnetism, and that's why they use the ceramic magnet in the back. You know, but for all intents and purposes, they're both magnets. I mean, it's all magnets. It's just, you know, a copper coil wrapped around magnets. So it's just funny how people get so worked up about Alnico versus ceramic. So anyway, and then on like vintage or boutique pickups, they'll be made out of vulcanized fiberboard for the base and the top of the bobbin. But this is just plastic. It's all one piece plastic. So that could be where they're cutting costs, is for the bobbins. And then these cloth covered wires, if you've done any kind of research into materials for building your own guitar pickups, you'll know that cloth covered wire is way more expensive than the plastic coated wire. And then there's just a piece of tape around this. I'm not going to take it off this time. We'll show it in the video. There's a piece of basically just a thin Mylar electrical tape around it, and the copper it's full. It's, you know, and it's that really, really super hair thin copper, and they wound these things really full. And it's just a plastic cover. So there's your pickup, the plastic cover on it, and that comes right off. And you've got, looks like a molded plastic bobbin. So that's probably a little bit how they cheat with these. You've got an ABS, this is probably ABS plastic, vacuum formed. And then you've got a bobbin that's ABS plastic. And then there's the name, the number on the back. LJ48-2, whatever that is. And then they've got electrical tape wrapped around, real thin electrical tape. Actually, it's probably made for pickups. I don't know. It's not like a regular electrical tape. And okay, so let's reveal the copper winding. So there's the copper winding, hair thin, and it's wound pretty nice. It's wound full, and it's got wax on it, so I guess it's wax potted. I mean, I don't know. I want to be careful not to break that It's like a hair thin copper. So I'm going to put this tape back on so nothing happens to it. And like I said, it's got wax on it, so I don't know. I assume it's wax potted, but maybe not. There. So protected, everything's good back in the plastic case. And so what I discovered is there's labels stamped on the backs of these pickups. And just with a number. And this one is the middle pickup. It's got the yellow wire on it. And this has black and white wire. So I think the middle wires are yellow and the bridge and neck pickups are the white. And so this one says LJ50-1 and this one says LJ48-2. And so I was like, did a Google search of LJ50-1 pickups. And I found some pickups, a set of 3 pickups for sale on eBay that were pulled from a guitar. And they were LJ 50s, I think, or 51s or something. And then in that search, Leo James came up. And I thought, oh, that makes sense. LJ, Leo James. And then I'm like, well, I don't think Leo James are made in China, but they are. They're made in China. I think I was confusing them with IYV. IYV or IYV guitars, because those are made in, I think, Vietnam, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think at least the pickups could be Leo James, but maybe the whole guitar is made by Leo James. So I just thought that was interesting. Maybe you don't think it's interesting, but I was kind of surprised by that. Okay, so then I took apart the humbucker. As you'll see, I ground the solder off the, that holds the plastic cover on, and to reveal the insides. I didn't take the tape off there, but I mean they're filled pretty good as far as how many winds with copper. I mean they didn't short these. They're pretty full. And I believe everything's wax potted because there's wax. So I don't know if they just dip it real quick or if they soak it or if it's just, I don't know. It seems to me it's wax potted because there's wax everywhere. And then the only thing this one, any identifying marks on it is there's a B stamped into it, and that's for bridge. Okay, so I think I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about. So let's get to the body. So the body is kind of where I think that the majority of the cost of this has been, this is where the savings are. This is where they've cut corners, okay? So what I did was I put my dust mask on and my safety glasses in my hearing protection, and I took this out into the driveway and sanded off the finish. And then I took some alcohol and wiped the dust off so I could kind of see the grain. And what you end up with
so the top
is there's a multi-piece body. So there's about one, maybe it was easier to see with the, I think that's all one piece there. There might be a seam right there. So I don't know, 3 pieces, maybe 4, I don't know. It looks like it's, not very many. But then there's a big, place where they filled in. I don't know if it's split there or whatever, but it's filled in. And then there's a strip of veneer around the outside of it that looks darker. Or maybe that's sanding sealer. I mean, to me, it looks like there's two different maybe woods there, but I don't know. That could be like a sanding sealer to seal the end of that. But the back is clearly a laminate. There's a solid laminate over to either hide the multi-piece body or just to give it a real smooth surface to paint with. Because it says in the listing for this that it's a roasted mahogany body. Well, the wood down in here looks like it could be mahogany, but this top veneer, to me, looks like maple. It's even got a knot, the grain in it. I mean, it looks like maple, maybe a different wood, but that's a super thin veneer there. And so, I don't know, is it like, are they being deceptive because they put a veneer over it to hide the seams so you didn't know how many pieces of wood it was made from? Or is that just sort of standard practice that they, like if this were to be a burst top, then they have a real nice even, an even piece of wood. I don't know. So, but that's kind of a shoddy job there where they put quite a bit of wood filler in there. So I don't know if that was, did it split after it was joined, after the wood was joined? I don't know. It's hard to say. But then, like I said, the grain on this, because there's two different colors going on here. There's this brownish color, and then up here is this lighter color, but the grain goes all the way through it. So that makes me think that this is just like either a epoxy that they spread over it so that they got a nice smooth edge to work with. Because this wood feels like it maybe is more like when you sand some wood, it kind of gets feathery like. So maybe they put that epoxy in there so that when they sanded it down, it was nice and smooth. Because this here is like, it's got that feathery look to it. But then this was sanded, it didn't. It's really nice and smooth. So I don't know. I'm interested to see what people think. And then, like I said, there were some little fit and finish issues. Like there's something going on here. I don't know if they added a piece of veneer in there or what. And so that just kind of boggles my mind about this body, because usually when you're CNCing something, everything is pretty perfect because the machine, because even right here, there's a cut, an uneven cut here. And right here, there's this opening that has a little uneven cut there. And so it almost looks like this was made from a template rather than CNC'd. Because you can use a template and you can use a pin router and you can route. So that's curious. So let's talk about the pickups being microphonic. I yelled into the guitar, and you'll be able to hear it. I'm going to turn the gain way up on it, so you'll be able to hear my voice in it. So yes, they are microphonic. So let's check that out. Oh, and then somebody said that you could use the pickups as a microphone, so let's find out. Okay, so now let's compare that to my Gibson SG. Gibson pickups should be microphonic, right? So let's check that out. Okay, here we go. Those are more microphones. Oh, wow, it's way more microphonic than the Firefly. Wow. Okay, let's test another one. What else can we test out here? All right, these are this is Heritage, and these are these are Seymour Duncans. So let's try this one out. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Hey, 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 hey. Yeah. Okay. But Firefly, oh, you could use those pickups as a microphone. Apparently you can use Seymour Duncan pickups as a microphone and Gibson pickups as a microphone. So there you go. Okay, so what does all this mean? Why go through all this to try to prove that a Firefly guitar is, I'm not trying to prove that it's better than a Fender or a Gibson. I'm just trying to show that they're good guitars. They're decent guitars. There's no need for most players to go out and spend a ton of money if you don't have it, especially if you don't have it. That's all I'm trying to do, is save people from, buying something needlessly. If you desperately want a Gibson or a Fender and you save up for years and you buy one, or you heaven forbid, put it on credit and pay it off on time, then, why not? Do what you want to do. It's your money. But I guess what I'm trying to do is just show that, sort of the mythology around these cheap guitars and the things that a lot of these dudes say about them, it isn't true. Budget guitars have come a long, long way in the past, 50 years, 30 years. I mean, they just keep getting better every year. And with CNC technology, it's really leveled the playing field. I mean, like I said, this neck is absolutely amazing. And then you'll get the guys that are like, oh, roasted wood doesn't mean anything, and stainless steel frets is just a gimmick and everything. Well, why does Fender Mod Shop charge so much extra for roasted woods, flamed maple, stainless frets? I don't even think their stainless frets have the ball ends on them. Because people say, oh, the frets won't last. It's like, it's stainless steel. How's it not going to last? This is going to last forever. I mean, they put nickel frets on a regular Fender USA, so I don't know. So I find the arguments against budget guitars to be kind of weak, because they're obviously made well. They're gonna last. They're gonna hold up. People talk about resale value all the time. I'm so sick of hearing people talk about resale value. It's a $200 guitar. If I lose 50% of the value on it when I go to sell it, I'm still only out $100. If I take my custom shop here that I paid almost $3,000 for and sell it and only get $2,300 for it, that's like a $700 loss. That's like 3 of these guitars. So that the whole notion that the resale value, I mean, they just keep pounding this idea of resale value. To me, resale value means I bought a guitar for $2,000 and 3 years later I go to sell it and I make $1,000 on it. Because that's only happened to me twice. I bought a Tom DeLonge signature Stratocaster from Goodwill. I think I made $500 when I sold it. I actually made $500. With all the fees and with all the shipping and everything, I came out with $500 more in my pocket than I paid for it. And then I had a Martin D28 that I think it was a HD28 that I bought on eBay, and I got it for a really good price. And then when I went to sell that, I think I made $500, $600, $700 on that, and that was actual profit. Other than that, every single guitar I've ever sold, regardless of the name on the headstock, regardless of how much the guitar cost, originally, I've lost money on. And it's usually between, name brand guitars, you can expect to lose about 25%, 20 to 25% of the value. And then the no-name budget stuff, you'll lose pretty much 50% of the value. But again, you're losing 50% of $200. You're not losing 50% of $3,000. Even the 20 to 25% that you'll lose on a Fender or a Gibson, that's a lot of money. If you're paying $3,000 for a guitar, 25% of that is a lot. So this whole idea that, resale value, I mean, I don't know. I think it's just hogwash. But I don't know, maybe these guys have got it figured out. Maybe some of these people know how to buy guitars super cheap or talk people down or whatever, and then go to sell them and they sell them for more money. I don't know. Good on you if you can make that happen. So I haven't been able to do it. So anyway, let the comments begin. I know people are going to complain about the multi-piece body, but keep in mind, if you go to YouTube and you look at Fender Corona factory tours, you will see 3-piece bodies moving through the assembly line. So, and consider this, a 1-piece body seems to me like it would be less stable than a multi-piece body. When you laminate pieces of wood together, it results in a stronger piece of wood. So, I don't know. Anyway, I just thought this was an interesting experiment to kind of really drill down and get under the hood on these Firefly guitars. Take it for what it is. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting and fun. I'm going to continue to talk about how good budget guitars are, and I'm even going to compare them to Fender and Gibson, and I may even say that they're better or just as good. One, I like how it kind of ruffles some people's feathers and gets people riled up. But two, it's a guitar. It's probably one of the simplest things that you can build, and there's not a lot to them. So when people get really worked up about the differences between a U.S. and a Chinese-made guitar, it just kind of boggles my mind a little bit. And then they start to inject sort of the patriotism and sort of politics into it, that if you're an American and you buy from China, then you're somehow a communist or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, it's like, we're talking about guitars here. It's just, we're not talking about geopolitics. We're not talking about, life-saving cancer treatment. It's just a guitar, So, but anyway, it's been fun. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I appreciate the continued support. If there's any kind of videos you want to see, let me know. Next up is I'm going to start building pickups. I'm going to build some pickups. I'm going to do some more guitar builds. Kind of talk about, the differences between cheap pickups and expensive pickups. And so we'll see what happens going forward. So anyway, thanks again for tuning in. Jay Salen Guitar. We'll see you next time.